Okay.
All right, we've tried to clear up our technical issues. We're back talking some Gator sports. And Frank, you were making some points about Gator basketball and just what a great year it's been. And, you want to cap it off, boy, and you got a chance. You don't have – this team is really good, and there's no one out there who doesn't think they have a shot at winning the whole thing.
Right. And you said it with the top of this thing before we had our little technical snafu that everyone's picking them. First of all, a glorious weekend. They beat 3 really good teams in Missouri, Alabama, Tennessee, gutted Alabama, dominated, I thought, Tennessee, even though the score was close. They have a good team, Dan. They have no flaws. They've got those 4 guards who are as good as anybody's. They've got 2 7-footers because Condon's essentially a 7-footer. They run the floor. They've got a 6'10", 250 bodybuilder that nobody can move. And their 4th big is maybe the best of all in Houck, the way he runs the floor. They are complete. The biggest concern I have, I say concern, is one thing that has fueled them to this, and I think they'll overcome it. But the one thing that's fueled them to this, Dan, is that chip on the shoulder. We don't have any McDonald's All-Americans. We got a bunch of transfers and one guy from Australia and another guy from Central Europe, and that's how we're winning. Well, can you keep that chip on your shoulder? Can you keep that nobody believes in us mentality when now everybody believes in them, when everybody's picking them, when they're the hunted, not the hunter? That's the challenge. And look, Todd Golden's great. He understands the psychology of the human mind as well as any coach I've been around. He's really good at it. But that's the challenge now, is how do you respond as the hunted? Because they'll be just about everyone's picking them. They'll be the Vogue pick. They'll be the popular pick. How do they respond to that?
Yeah, that's good, because I've been trying to think, like, what's the Achilles heel of this club? And a lot of people want free throws, and they've shot free throws really well down the stretch. And then I start worrying about foul trouble, but they have so much depth. They can just keep running guys out there. So I don't think that's going to get them. And when they have a poor shooting night, will that get them? No, because they rebound as well as anyone in the country. But again, it's college basketball. It's March Madness. Anything can happen. What would be a disappointment? I mean, they're not going to lose to Norfolk State, okay? In all likelihood, I don't think they're almost a lock to get to the Sweet 16. But if they don't get to the Final Four, would you be disappointed?
It's a great question, Dan. I hear you, and I don't know the answer completely.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to answer it because it's a great question. These guys have taken us on a joyride that we needed.
Right.
From the end of November till now, it's been a joyride. Most of us, I bet you're like me, have gone out of our way to watch every dribble, even in some seasons where we might not have. This year, you couldn't wait. You couldn't wait to read everything Chris Harry wrote about this team and everything you see about this team. I look at every video online. It's been a joyride, man, and I'm grateful for it. So it's a great season for me, even if they have a disappointing end. But you're measured on the postseason. They're going to win. Obviously, they'll win easy in the first game. After that, I'm going to be nervous. Say what you want about UConn. I assume they're going to beat Oklahoma. But UConn has won back-to-back. UConn understands how to be there. Some teams turn this light switch on even when they're not as good, when they get into that dance. And so, yeah, I would be I don't think my expectations are the Elite Eight, or I'd be surprised if they're not in the Elite Eight. I wouldn't be shocked if they're not in the Final Four. They don't win the whole thing. But I'd be surprised if they're not in the Elite Eight. But I'm not going to allow myself to not enjoy what this joyride has been if something shocking happens. What makes the March Madness great, Dan, and also freaking nerve-wracking as hell, is the one-and-done nature of it. Think about it. I mean, football's always one and done. College football is one and done. But basketball's not, except for in college basketball. So the one-and-done nature makes the tournament spectacular, but it makes it nerve-wracking as heck. So to your question, nothing they can do can ruin this year for me. But I'd be kind of disappointed if they don't get to the 16 or the 8 or at least the 16. I would be.
Yeah, I agree with you. What makes this season great for me is winning the conference tournament. Because again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we don't do that often. We've won 5 of them. Kentucky has won 31 or 32 of them. I think we tied Tennessee with our 5th. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoy that when a Florida team is in the limelight like that. So I'm excited about this March Madness. I'm invoking the alma mater rule. You've got to ride them all the way. Brackets be damned if they lose. I suspect in this Sunshine State, there'll be a lot of Florida picks because obviously the national guys are all picking them as well. So, I look forward to it. I'm not complaining. I think the committee was as bad as the football committee. I don't think it's as noticeable. I don't understand why teams, nothing again, they're all good teams. I think the SEC is a little bit, honestly, for me, I don't think they're quite as good as everybody makes it out to be. I have a real problem with a 6-12 team being in the tournament with a conference record of 6-12. That doesn't jibe with me. But it is what it is. Florida should have been ranked higher, but that's neither here nor there. If they're as good as we all think they are, they'll find ways to win.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one thing will be interesting to watch is you said this at the top, right at the top of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You always have that game. I was sitting at press row
right
when Mike Miller made the magical shot against Butler in 2000.
Oof.
Or if not, they're one and done, and then they went to the final game. I remember, I've told this story before. Lon Kruger and I got to be pretty good buddies.
Mm-hmm.
He then was at Illinois. So after they won, he was sitting at press row with me. We were just watching the game. And he knew he had to play the winner of the game. And before the game started, he goes, "Boy, Frank, Billy's got a good team." I said, "Well, you guys are seated ahead of them." He said, they have a better team than anybody realizes. So we're watching the game together. Lon Kruger, he's sitting at press row. And when Miller made the runner to win, that meant Illinois had to play Florida, the 4 and the 5. Illinois was a 4, Florida was a 5 seed. When he made that shot, I looked at Lon, who I'd known forever and is a good friend, and he had a sick look on his face, Dan. He goes, "Oof." I said, "What a game." He said, "Yeah, it was." He said, "Okay, see ya." He knew what was coming. And if you remember, Florida beat him by like 20 points. He knew what he was up against, and everybody knew, but you had to win that one game. In their championship year in 2006, I was also at that game. It was in Minneapolis, Dan. And do you remember the Georgetown game?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody remembers the Villanova game because Villanova was the 1 seed.
Right.
Final, Florida blew them away. But in the game before that, they're playing.
They needed the ball to bounce their way, right? Brewer?
Jeff Green missed a 3.
Yes.
Jeff Green had a look from the top of a 3 from the top of the key. He had a pretty wide open look with about 10 seconds left that would have won the game for Georgetown or given them a lead, and he missed it, and Florida got the rebound and hung on to win. That was the game. It was Georgetown in 06. It was Butler in 2000. 07, I don't remember if they had one. I think they were so good by 07 they had one. But back to the point, Florida hasn't had a lot of those this year. They had South Carolina on the road.
Right.
Richard made the left-handed runner to win the game, the left-hander off the glass to win the game. But they haven't had a lot of plays where they had to make a play at the end of the game. If they get one of those, I'll be interested to see how it goes.
Well, I will say this. In watching this team, whenever they need a basket, Walter Clayton Jr. gives them a basket. And that's been a good theme throughout the year. Let me throw this at you. If this Florida team were to win a natty in dominating fashion, where would they rank in the history of Gator basketball teams?
Well, I think if they win the natty, and number one, there's only 3 that will win the natty.
Yeah, but could you make an argument that they're the best?
It'd be hard for anybody to be better than a team that won it back to back. Okay,
and had 3 first-round picks,
three top 10 picks. Correct.
Yes,
it'd be hard. It would be hard to be better than that. But I will tell you, this team would be. I would have them on par. I'd have them equal to that team. You know, we argued forever who was better, 96 or 06, 08. Well, the truth is, it's a tie. They're all 3 ties.
Yeah.
And I would have this team right there with that team. I will say this. This team is very similar to that team in a lot of ways. Think about it.
Yeah.
Compton's a lot like Noah, all right? If you combine, because he's 6'11" and really 7 foot and runs the floor like a wide receiver. If you look at Chinyelu and how you combine them, and they're kind of Horford. They've got all 3 perimeter guys can shoot it.
Yeah.
They got a big guy off the bench. I mean, they're built a little different, but they're very similar in terms of what they can get done to that championship team. Like you said it, there's not a lot of weaknesses. The biggest weakness they have is they haven't been there. Todd Golden never coached in a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, and most of these players, Elijah Martin has, but most of these players have never played in that. And they're going to play players that have. And how that personifies itself, we won't know till we get to the games. But I love where they are, Dan. I can't wait to watch. I can't wait.
One more thing. I was a little surprised I was like, I guess that is true. Walter Clayton Jr., the first team All-American in Gator basketball history. Did that surprise you? And Frank, who's the best Gator basketball player in history?
Boy, those are great questions. Let me give you my thoughts on all of that, and I'll expound a bit. First of all, here's what Florida's had great players.
Yeah.
First team All-Americans usually come from the brand. Okay. Right. How many has Duke and Carolina and Kentucky had?
Right. Sure.
And part of that's Florida's problem for not expanding the brand. Right. Mm-hmm. They haven't been good enough times, but it is hard to believe that they haven't had a first team All-American player. But they've had very few teams that were looked at as one of the best teams in the country. That's happened very few times. And the 14 team was looked at that way, but that was all about collective. We knew there were no NBA players of note on that team. We all knew that. So that team just didn't have that. So, but it had great collectivity of all the guys, or connectivity with all the guys together. So it did surprise me a little bit. The best player of all time is Neil Walk. I mean, he averaged 26 and 19. Yeah. And he came back the next year where everybody double teamed him, and he averaged 25 and 18. Nobody in college basketball, Dan, will ever average 26 and 19 again. That'll never happen. Okay, it was a different game then. I know that.
Yeah.
He was a second overall pick in the draft to some guy named Luau Sindor.
Yes, he was.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So he's the best player. There will never be another best player. But the question then becomes, you take him off the list, then how do you rank all the guys from the 06-07 team? Do you rank Vernon Maxwell? People forget about him, but he was a great player. I went on X.
Great player.
I went on X and I posted my 5 all time. I had Neil Walk, Horford and Noah, Vernon Maxwell, and Walter Clayton Jr. That was my team. And with apologies to Mike Miller, with apologies to Scott Wilbekin, to the other great players. For me, it was Neil Walk, Noah and Horford, Vernon Maxwell, who was so good, and Walter Jr. So I think he's one of the 5 best of all time. I believe that very easily. What do you think?
I like that. Mad Max is in my wheelhouse too. And I think people forget for a lot of reasons, and it's been some time, and he's crazy, but man, what an athlete. They forget what a good football player he was at Buchholz, right? I mean, he was, Mad Max was something special and an unbelievable athlete, and proved it by what he did in the association as well. So
he would have been I don't know if he'd have been as good, but he would have been a Randy Moss-like receiver had he chosen. He was 6'4", 185, 190, could outrun everybody. He was a great player. Great player.
He was. Frank, switch gears and we'll wrap up, but springtime updates. Gator baseball ran into a buzzsaw. Tennessee's better right now. The good news is it's just mid-March, but boy, Tennessee, that guy up there has done a nice job. This is coming off a natty, and they've got a bunch of freshmen starting. Now, there's some good things that happened for Florida up there. Aiden King's pitching performance stood out above everything else. So they hadn't been shut out in quite a long time. So, we'll see what it means for Florida going forward. But tough series up there in Knoxville.
Yeah, I think the Florida baseball team is going to be okay. They were 11, 12, 13, and 2 when they went up there. It was on the road. They had a lead in one of the games, maybe the third game. They were up 4-1 in one of the games. Number one, they're going to be good every Friday night when Liam Peterson pitches. They're going to be good. I think Aiden King has evolved into their Saturday guy, the freshman from Jacksonville, who's really good. Pierce Coppola is down for a while, and that's a shame. He's had so many injuries. You were hoping this would be the year. I talked to Sully before the season, and he was hoping this would be the year that Pierce could be healthy. So you feel for him. But do they have enough? They'll score enough runs. They'll again, don't judge them on a road series at Tennessee, because Tennessee's very good. They'll be good, if not great. And Sully's teams tend to be better in May and June than they are in February and March. So I think they'll be okay. So I'm not too worried about that. Hey, one other thing I do want to ask you about.
Yeah.
I think the football team is loaded. Okay. I think they're 4 deep in the running back room. I think they've got 6 or 7 receivers. The video you see, this guy, Dallas Wilson, the freshman, is so good. Vernell Brown's so good. Eugene Wilson, Trey Wilson looks like he's back to himself. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country with 4 returners. I think they've got dudes on defense like they haven't had before. Those linebackers, Miles Graham and Pup, and the edges, blah, blah, blah. But should I worry about DJ Lagway's arm and all? I mean, he hasn't thrown yet in spring. And Billy Napier, God bless him, said, well, this is not unnormal. Well, yes, it is. I've covered spring practices for 45 years, and I don't ever remember a quarterback 2 weeks in not being able to throw. Ever.
I'm not. Yeah, it was the day I read it, I became concerned.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I'm guessing there's a lot of rehab involved, but I'm not annoyed, but I'm wondering if this was a lingering issue, why didn't we get it? The season's been over for a long time. Get it fixed. I mean,
I have so many questions.
Does no good for him to be. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot there that, because you're right. If you didn't have DJ Lagway's shoulder as a concern, Frank.
Yes.
I mean, when listening to, I said this to on the radio the other day. I mean, I'm like, the kid from Dallas, the receivers, is this year's Jeremiah Smith. Right. Lagway told us we got the best offensive line in the country. We already know how good the running backs are going to be. They're raving about some edge guy that they stole from Penn State who's a 5-star who can't be blocked. I mean, every time I listen, I'm getting a great breakdown of Florida football. I'm like, forget the playoff, man. Let's win the SEC. And, I mean, it's that much. But then that shoulder popped up and you're like, well, we got to know he's okay. I'm trusting that they are not stupid and they know what they're doing. And there's just maybe the big pictures involved here. And we don't want to do the surgery if he needs. I'm not saying he needs it, by the way. I have no idea. But we'll go heavy on the rehab and see how that goes. We're not that concerned with spring ball. That's what I'm hoping for. But yes, I am concerned. Yes.
Because it doesn't happen. I mean, pitchers get shut down all the time.
Yeah.
But football, and I've seen every once in a while.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks got arm fatigue and they give them a day off.
Mm-hmm.
But for a quarterback to have, and I have no idea what it is. I don't know if it's an injury, if it's a surgery. What I do know is it's very unusual. And by the way, his arm looked fine last year.
Right.
He had and here's what I don't want. And I'm not suggesting this is where they're headed. But gosh, you don't want him to be the injury guy. You want him to be the guy that it's the hammy, and he got the concussion, then it was the hammy, now it's the shoulder. Gosh, he's not even a sophomore yet. He's such a good kid. He's such a good player. He's such a good representative of Florida. God, that kid is. I mean, that kid's Tebow 12 years later or 15 years later. What you hope is he can do all that. But the one thing Tebow has, he was healthy as crap, man. He was always healthy. And I hope DJ Lagway can be healthy, because if he's healthy, like really healthy, then Katie barred the door on what they can be. So anyway, I'm wondering, worry with me, Dan. I need someone to worry with me.
I am there with you. You can call me anytime. I will continue to maintain worry until I know that, he's fine and 100%. I see him running and throwing. I think he made a comment that he didn't even score a rushing touchdown last year for the first time in his life. So he's looking forward to having the use of his legs too. So I'm excited, man. It's a good time to be a Gator. Let's focus on hoops. Let's go win a natty and see how that goes. We'll talk to you next week, Frank. Good stuff as always.
All right. It's all things Gators. Dan Hicken and Frank Frangie.
All right. Thank you, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, sc-ortho.com for all your orthopedic needs. Frank, have a great week.
You too, Hick.